Good afternoon. When I was a teenager, my twin sister and I, she's up on screen, used to look after kids with disabilities. We'd do respite care after school, school holidays. Disability doesn't discriminate. You can be a family with a whole lot of money and have a child with a disability, or you can be living in poverty and have a child with a disability. You can also go from having a whole lot of money to living with very little. We used to look after a little boy, his name was Max, and his mum was Rachel. Rachel was one of the statistics that we know about families with kids with disabilities. You're more likely to be separated than you are to still be married. Because of Max's disability, Rachel couldn't work. They lived in public housing. They didn't have a car. Their access to public transport was terrible. And everything they did, where they went, what they ate, how they lived, was so tightly controlled because they had so few financial resources. Money matters. Whether you think that money can or can't buy you happiness, whether you're interested in doing your budgeting or you think finances is a bore, money can determine where we live, who we live with, how we live, what we do with our free time, and it can help determine our futures. It also becomes really critically important when we experience a financial shock. Let me give you a couple of scenarios. Pick one of these four things. You have an unexpected mobile phone bill. Your car suddenly needs major repairs that you didn't expect. Your fridge dies. Or you might suddenly need to move house and you've got to find a whole lot of money to pay for a new bond. Just imagine that one of those things that you've just picked is going to cost you $2,000. The question is, where do you find that $2,000 from? Or are you going to sink with the consequences? For most of us, we'll be able to draw on all sorts of resources to find that money. We'll have savings, we might use a credit card, or we might be tapping into family and friends to borrow it. But what happens if you have no savings? What happens if you don't have a credit card and you can't access one because the banks won't give it to you? What happens if your family or friend can't lend you $2,000? What if you are like the 1 in 8 Australians who cannot raise $2,000 in a week in an emergency? This is Rachel's situation. When Rachel's fridge died, she didn't have the money to replace it. She ended up in the unregulated rent-to-buy industry. It meant for Rachel that instead of paying what I would pay for a fridge walking into a retailer, she's in a position where she's paying up to 800% more. In fact, the Australian Securities and Investment Commission found that one Centrelink consumer paid over $3,000 for a $300 clothes dryer. Rachel is also not able to access a traditional line of credit, like a credit card from a financial institution, because she just doesn't have the income level to pay it back. So the banks won't give it to her. It means that when she needs cash in a hurry, she's likely to end up in the fringe sector to get that cash. And Rachel's not alone in this. In 2014 to 15, for example, across the country, we had 1.3 million small credit loans issued. That's worth $667 million. And we know that people get trapped in these repeat cycles of debt with these types of lenders. Rachel could be eligible for a low or no interest loan scheme. These are great initiatives, but they're hard to get. It takes much longer to process than a payday lender that you can often get within an hour by going online. We also know that the no interest loan scheme just can't keep up with the demand that the payday lending sector or the fringe lending sector is meeting. So take those 1.3 million loans that I was telling you about and compare that to the less than 50,000 no interest loans that were given out over the same time period. So the question for people like Rachel and others across the country who are in this position when they experience a financial shock is how do they be better supported? What resources do they need to grow on to be financially resilient? At the Centre for Social Impact, we've done some new research to look into this. We've come up with 4 key resources that we know matter that help people become financially resilient. Those include economic resources, your financial knowledge and behaviour, the types of products and services that you have access to, and your social capital. Let's unpack what these 4 components actually include. So if we take the first one, economic resources, there's a whole range of things that includes, but fundamentally your income, your ability to save, how you manage your debts, and how you meet the cost of living matter enormously. As far as financial knowledge and behaviour, this is the way we traditionally think about financial literacy and financial capacity. And it's basically your understanding of money and financial products and services and how you go about using them. In terms of access to products and services, this includes basic products and services, things like a bank account, a line of credit, access to insurance. And it's not just about your ability to access these, it's also important that they're affordable, that they're appropriate, that they're acceptable to you, and that they're meeting your demands. And finally, the social capital component is all about having access to the supports when and if you need them. This can be family and friends, but it can also be community and government service providers. We took these 4 components of financial resilience and asked, how are we doing across the country? What we found was that 2 million Australians are not doing well. 2 million Australians are in a position of being in severe financial stress or vulnerability. Another 10 million have low levels of risk. What this means collectively is we have around 2 in 3 of our adult population who have some level of risk around their financial vulnerability and their financial stress. We have just over 1 in 3 who come out as financially secure. If we break this down into different pieces to the puzzle, we understand some more things. So 1 in 2 Australians have less than 3 months income saved. 1 in 6 Australians cannot manage or are not able to manage their debts or repayments. 1 in 4 Australians are having difficulty accessing products and services. And worryingly, 1 in 2 don't follow a budget. And we also know that 1 in 2 have a poor or a basic understanding of financial products and services. Finally, 1 in 5 have very limited social connections. And we know that 1 in 30 need government and community support services but are not able to access them. If we look back at this holistically and we think about how all of these pieces of the puzzle fit together, it's very easy to imagine how quickly your financial resilience diminishes as we start to lose pieces of this puzzle. If we go back to Rachel's situation and we think about her position, even though she has really great budgeting skills and her financial knowledge and behaviour is strong, she has very low economic resources. She has no social capital to draw from. And she has no access to appropriate, affordable financial products and services. It's easy to imagine how quickly things can go wrong. And like Rachel, we can understand who does better and who does worse across that financial resilience spectrum. The best offs have high education, have a high income. They're things that we would expect. And we know those most at risk are people who are living in public housing, who are on short-term rents, who are in student accommodation, who have low incomes. And we know that mental health is a key predictor or has a very strong relationship with financial resilience across all 4 components. There's probably a whole bunch of you in the room who are part of this best off group. You might have a mortgage, you might have access to multiple accounts, and you experience that financial shock. For many of you, it's not going to be a significant stress. You're going to think about how you move money from your savings account. You might swap money from your mortgage into another account to cover that bill. You're going to draw on your financial resources. It's going to be a pain and you're not going to like it, but you're going to be able to cope with it. But we know that the path to disadvantage is a slippery one. And it doesn't take much for something to go wrong, like you lose a job, there's a family illness, something changes in your life, for that trajectory to change. So where does that leave us? I think as a country, there are 3 key things we need to be thinking about. Know the 4 components or pillars of financial resilience and what they include. Secondly, we need sound support systems in place that can actually meet demand. And thirdly, this is not a simple problem with a simple solution that is the responsibility of only one group. We need shared responsibility around fixing this. And what that might look like is things like governments basically making sure there's sufficient income support, putting in place the right regulations around the financial sector, making sure there's money for alternative sources of low interest credit. It means that the not-for-profit sector and community organisations can better understand their vulnerable customers and what kind of supports, target the right supports to the right people at the right time. Corporates like financial institutions and utility companies, for example, can better understand who their customers are, who's most at risk, how they better support them, where they need to cross-refer, how they make their products and services understandable and accessible to different groups across the population. And I think collectively, as a social purpose sector, we need to be better at measuring what difference we're making, and so we can better target the resources that we invest to get the change we want to see. The future can look different for families like Rachel's and the generations that come after them. We're already trying to work differently in this space. For example, I'm involved in the Financial Inclusion Action Plan, and there are a host of things going on around the country. The future can look brighter for people like Rachel and their families if we think about this differently, if we work differently, and if we work systematically to make sure we have a stronger, more financially resilient population.